Hi everybody, I'm Angie Hotz. I'm a birth doula and a childbirth educator here in Kitsap County, Washington. And I'm doing a project where I'm talking to different moms in the community and listening to their birth stories. And today we're talking to Andria.
Hi. This is Marin. She was born right here, almost exactly 11 months ago. And I guess
Like right where the camera is.
Yes, right where the camera is. So, I don't know, do you want me to talk about my C-section or?
Probably both.
Yeah.
To kind of lead up to it.
All right.
And why
So my first daughter is 3.5, and she was born via C-section here in Silverdale. I wasn't able to get pregnant for a long time, so when I did, it kind of took me by surprise, and I'm that like methodical, research everything type person, and so I really did that, and I just zeroed in on wanting to have a really natural, calm, supported birth with her, and I really thought that by reading books, talking to other people, I could really sort of manifest this birth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did what I thought was all of the right things. I had the birth ball. I did, I delved into the world of like really good like macro nutrition, and I exercised. I just did all these things to try and keep my body really healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And when push comes to shove, I realize now that my biggest mistake was not changing care providers.
Mm-hmm.
I stuck with the OB that I had been seeing for gynecological issues for a couple of years, and I really liked her. But again, I saw her once a year for like 15 minutes face to face, so you get a good vibe from somebody, but you don't really know them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stuck with her for all of my care, and I really didn't like the office. There was like 45-minute wait times sometimes when I showed up for my appointments. The like 2 times I had to cancel the appointment, I got this stern like lecture about you can't reschedule your appointments, which to me is kind of insane when you're pregnant and you have and you're working and you have all those other things going on. And so I hit my due date, and they kind of gave me this like, wow, you're really big and it's your due date. And started to instill a lot of fear in me, and I just thought, okay, they know what they're doing. And so she said, we'll send you for an NST just to check and check fluid levels. And the tech was like, everything looks great. Like for the NST, I was there for like 45 seconds before she got what she needed. I mean, it was so fast. Baby's great, baby's active, baby has tons of room. That's what the tech even said, which I don't know how much faith to put in that, but it was like, 25 minutes ago, someone was telling me I'm huge and I'm running out of space and she can't believe I'm still pregnant, even though I'm, 40 weeks. And so it was confusing. At my 41-week appointment, they were like, okay, it's time to get baby out. And they actually told me, like, this isn't safe anymore. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying, what's not safe about it? And they said, oh, well, we call 40 weeks your due date for a reason. And that's they shut it down, and that was that. And so they scheduled an induction, and at the last minute, I kind of panicked and realized I don't want an induction. Like, I don't want it to happen this way. And so I didn't show up. And then they called every morning for like 4 or 5 days in a row. Wow. And got really kind of nasty with me and started implying that they might drop me from their care. Like, you can't transfer care at 41.4, like, it's, what do you do? So I did. I showed up. They started the Pitocin. The contractions were terrible. They were on top of each other. Everyone sort of implied that I have a low pain tolerance, which is really the opposite. I think I have a very high pain tolerance, and so it just was crushing. Just from start to finish. It's just been this really long 2 weeks since I hit my due date. And so they just kept upping the Pitocin, and 2.5 days later, I was fully dilated. I'd been pushing for 5 or 6 hours. I was completely exhausted. And there was no communication at all. At some point they told me, like, you can feel her head, and I didn't want to. It freaked me out, so I didn't. And then, like, an hour later, I was like, well, can I feel her head now? And they're like, oh, her head's not there anymore. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay, all right. And then they said, we're going to go call the OB. And then the OB came in and said, it's time. And so we cried, and we had a C-section. And the recovery was really hard. Breastfeeding was really hard. Everything was really hard about having my C-section because I was unprepared for it. Yeah. And I'm the first person in, my immediate family to have ever had a C-section. So nobody really knew the tips and the tricks and the things to help support me, and it was all of the gross things, like my legs ballooned up from the fluids to the point where I couldn't even walk because it hurt so bad to flex my feet. And so maybe after my first was about a month old, we kind of did the, like, we're done having kids. Because that was really brutal. Everything about that was really difficult. And I suffered from postpartum depression for a year. When she was about 11 months was when it sort of hit its peak, to the point where something had to happen or I needed serious help. And my husband was supposed to deploy a month later. So it was really rough. But we reached out, we got help, and it was great. He came home, and suddenly I had baby fever again.
Of course.
Of course. So we started trying again. A year went by with no luck, and it was sort of devastating, but also sort of good. It gave me time to process and reach out. Like, it stopped being a tender thing to talk about, a sore spot to talk about when you're wherever and other moms start talking about their birth experience. For me, it was like, I don't want to talk about that. It hurts me. I can really easily cry over it. And it got to the point where it was like, this doesn't define me. It happened. And I started to realize, after reading hundreds of birth stories and talking to real people, that it was something that happened to me. And I definitely could have made other choices. But the only way to, like, know for sure is to try again. And so I still had baby fever, and before I knew it, I was pregnant. Really excited, interviewed some midwives, and then ended up having a miscarriage, which was super devastating because by that time I wanted that baby so bad, and I was so ready to try again. And then lo and behold, I got pregnant again a month later. And that was mind-boggling because I'd never gotten pregnant that fast in my whole life, and I actually just wasn't really ready. I hadn't worked through the miscarriage at all. So the first couple weeks of my pregnancy with Marin were really rough for me. It was just a lot of big feelings, really happy feelings, really low feelings, really scared feelings, a lot of doubt, a lot of, well, I just got pregnant right after I had a loss. I should have waited. What if I'm hurting this baby? What if my body isn't ready for any of this? What if I have to have another C-section? And then I found the midwife. She was just like a warm hug on the phone, even better in person. And she kind of shut all that down just by reassuring me and giving me the statistics that I needed to hear, because I'm that kind of person. And we got really excited, and we just set our hearts on having a home birth. That was sort of the big common denominator when I read those birth stories of, I had a C-section and then I had this beautiful VBAC, is the change in the care providers. Like, none of those stories, I would say read thousands of them, none of those stories were, I had this horrific unnecessary C-section with this OB, and then I had a VBAC with the same OB. Like,
it was beautiful, wonderful.
Right, no, none of them were like that. Like, some of them were like I had to have a C-section because I had placenta previa, and then I had this beautiful VBAC with the same OB. But I feel like those are very different than being forced in the spiral of induction to a C-section and then having this redeeming VBAC or whatever. So I thought, well, shoot, I have to fire the OB. And they did not take it well at all.
Really?
They were really awful to me. They called and harassed me for a solid month after I asked them to send my records over to the midwife. And it was just really rough. They even at one point had the actual doctor call and leave a long, lengthy voicemail on my phone about how, I had a C-section and I can't just gallop into the world of natural birth. That's basically what she said, and was so bitter and so sarcastic that it was like, oh my gosh. Because I considered, well, what if at some point I risk out of home birth? Is this the OB for me?
Right.
And I mean, she sealed that. She was not the OB for me ever again, really. Last ditch. I'm pretty sure if I was having a baby and she was on call, I would just walk outside and have the baby in the car. Not really, but it was very hard to be treated like that for advocating for myself and changing care providers. And I think that's why people don't do it. And I think people stick with what works for them or what's covered by their insurance, because the fear of the unknown and cold calling new care providers is so scary. And you really have to lay yourself out there. You're sending your medical records to these people, and it's really hard. But it's so worth changing care providers even late in the game.
I changed with I had a different care provider for every one of all four of them. It was a different person. It just kept I don't know, I would have stayed with the good ones, but
Mm-hmm.
the hospital changed policies
Right.
or something else changed that I had to change. But yeah,
It's
you
hard.
send a fax, write a letter, email.
But I'm really glad we did it. And 5 years ago, if anyone would have told me you're gonna have a baby in your house, I would kind of laugh and be like, no, that's
Mhm.
crazy. Like, that's so not for me.
Mhm.
And I did all this reading and all this research again, and I talked to all these moms, and the bottom line is that I didn't think I could have the redeeming VBAC that I wanted in a hospital, and because
Yeah.
of the laws of our state, I couldn't have a VBAC in a birth center. So
You'd have to travel.
I know. So here I was planning a home birth, despite never seeing myself as being the home birthing type, and it started with a few weeks of nervousness, like what are we getting ourselves into, and then sort of progressed into like, okay, let's buckle down and get ready for this. And then towards the end, it was sort of this euphoric, lovely feeling of I get to just stay home.
Mm-hmm.
This is my safe zone. It's comfortable. It's and I sort of love the idea of being in charge of my front door, because that was the one thing I hated at the hospital is like every couple hours the door would open and you don't actually even know who's coming in the door. Sometimes it'd be a nurse, sometimes it would be a different nurse, sometimes it would be an OB, sometimes it would be an on-call, sometimes it would be a pediatrician wanting to read vitals, sometimes it would be security coming in because the baby's anklet fell off and set off an alarm or something, I don't know. And so I love the idea of birthing at home, and like I didn't have to let anyone in the front door that I didn't want there for my birth, and that was so amazing. It was really exciting, and one of those things that once I sort of realized like this, I own this space. I just felt like at peace and ready to have this baby, and then her due date came and went, and then 41 weeks came and went, and then 41.3 came and went, and it was like, oh, she's never coming out. Maybe she doesn't want to be born out. And again, we just had this care provider who understood that going late and being induced was the beginning of the fear and the traumatic birth cycle for my first. So the more pregnant I stayed, the more like calming, soothing, reassuring she was. She would spend more time at those last appointments when really all that you just do a quick checkup, really. She'd palpate baby, she'd talk to baby, she'd talk to me. My toddler was allowed to come to all of my appointments, and they were very toddler friendly. So she got to hear, she got to use the stethoscope, and she got to measure my belly, and she really got to be a part of that.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was good, and it's almost a soothing distraction to see someone else just being very kind to your whole family. I think kindness and that time and that touch and that really personalized contact made just the world of difference for me at the very end, when I really was dismal, like I'm gonna be pregnant forever. And my pelvis is falling apart, and I can't breathe, and when I'm pregnant I have like these giant horrible acne patches on my face, and so it was just like, I'm just gonna look like this forever, and it's gonna be horrible, and I'm gonna just move under a bridge because I'm 2 steps away from being in control. And so it was very much lovely to have that care provider give me the extra love that I needed to get there. And so then sure enough, we woke up, it was a weekend, it was Sunday, and we decided, okay, let's just go for a hike. We love to go walk in the preserve and let the dogs get some exercise and let the big kid run around with a friend or just by herself. And so it was kind of one of those dreary Sunday mornings, and my husband's like, let's go walk in the woods, and I'm literally sitting on the couch thinking like, go for a walk is the absolute last thing I want to do. Like, are you going to push me through the woods, And
I ride in the stroller.
And he said, like, come on, let's go do it. Like, you never know. What if you have the baby soon and you're not going to be up to walking with us? Like, let's go do this one last family thing. And sort of guilt trip me into it. So I put on these horrible wool pants that were like one of the few pairs of pants that still fit me. And they were like men's wool pants too, so they fit weird in the front. It was really suspect, and I didn't have a coat that covered my belly, so I'm tromping through the woods and my belly's freezing, and I'm wearing these men's wool pants that have room for junk in the front that I don't have, and And I'm just like, my family's ahead of me, and you know, even the 3-year-old's faster than I am, and I'm literally, well, she wasn't quite 3 at the time, and I'm tromping through the woods thinking, like, this is the worst. I can't live like this the rest of my life. We came home, and I was exhausted, and we laid down and took a nap, and I literally woke up, and it was like somebody had maybe plugged something into the wall and then plugged it into my body. It didn't hurt, but it was like, I'm awake. And I'm not like that. I'm not a morning person. I'm just awful to wake up, even from naps. And so it was like, sitting in bed thinking, what just happened? And, you know, toddler sleeping next to me. And then a whole contraction, like this big, long contraction happened. And it was real. And it was, I have never had a real contraction before that was not augmented.
Oh yeah, not
ever. I didn't even have like warm-up contractions. I had Braxton Hicks, but I had never had a real contraction until I think those 2 in bed that ended nap time. And then I got up, and it was so bizarre. I couldn't really believe that they were real, because in between, I vacuumed, I picked stuff up, I cooked dinner for the toddler, we put her to bed. We did some farm chores because we have animals, and it was like I really have to stop for each contraction. But then in between, I could get things done. And so I thought, this can't be real. Yeah. Like, people don't put their kids to bed while they're in labor, do they? I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. I remember reading someone who baked a cake in between her contractions, and I thought, oh, she's crazy. But I can understand that now, because you can do in between, well, I could do in between contractions. And then we got her to bed, and texted the midwife, and the midwife's like, okay, take a nap. So I laid on the couch. I was like, oh, there's no way I'm taking a nap. And so I got up and did for a little bit longer, but my husband was really worried that if I was sort of busybody for all these hours in between contractions, that I'd be tired when it was time for the real deal. So he was like, why don't you talk to the doula and see what she wants to do? And that's when you decided to head over and got here and started timing things. And then it was kind of funny, like right after you got here, I think that was when the start of like
you would go crazy.
No caffeine for
babies.
I think that was the start of when the time amnesia, because I don't really remember how much or what or where. I remember for a while trying to get comfortable, and just ended up standing a lot, I think. I don't know, maybe it was laying down when you got here. So
you were laying down, and then I remember asking if you've gotten up to pee lately, and I remember, I think you like rolled over because you didn't want to lay on that side anymore, and so you rolled over, and then I think you were saying something, because it was really soon after I got here. You were saying something about how like you were nauseous in between, and I was like, nauseous, huh? Okay.
And then I remember you saying like, oh, that was a really long contraction. You looked at the timer, and so then the midwife got here, and the assistant, and I don't even really remember them rolling in at all, except for I remember I remember thinking about wanting to get in the pool, but I didn't want to get in the pool if I was only like 2 centimeters dilated, and I really thought there's no way it could really be more than a few centimeters, because I had barely been like having intense contractions. And I mean, then she's like, oh, you're complete. And did I laugh? I swear I laughed when she said that, because it was like,
yeah, I think you did. But you like completely changed, like from enduring, concentrating, you know, kind of having to work through the contractions, which was kind of subtle though too, because I remember before, when you were on the couch, and I think we had stood and gone through contractions a couple times, you like were saying, you know, I feel really nauseous, and then I think I asked you if you wanted something, and you were like, I don't know what I want. And so I'm like ticking off all the things. I'm like, transition. I'm like, Dawn, maybe you should call the midwife and give him a little heads up, because, you know, this is suspicious here that we're moving along. And then when she said that you were complete after she got here, you were just like, oh, and just like completely perked up. And well, this is cool.
I mean, and I'll be honest, the midwife team that I saw briefly during the pregnancy that I lost sort of gave me this very long spiel about how VBACs are very long labors, and exhaustion is the number one reason for transfer during a VBAC, and they take a long time and long hours and hours and hours. It's just what kind of got beat into my head. So I really just thought, there's no way that I'm already complete, and I was feeling tired already in so many ways, and a big part of that is I probably should have had more to eat and drink. And so when she told me I was complete, I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I felt like when she got here, we were getting ready to settle in for the long haul, and I already felt like I had been, through the ringer a little bit. So it was really nice to hear that. Well, you're done. You're complete. It's time to just get baby out. And then that was a big job. It was more work than I anticipated. But yeah, so it was like 3-ish hours of pushing and lots of changing positions, and ended up only being in the pool for a very small amount of time.
Your ginormous
he
pool.
worked so hard to fill that giant pool. And then it was
You could have swam in the pool in that room.
It was a huge pool. Yes. And then I don't know, at what point we decided that maybe she was stuck. If it was just, I don't even know.
Before her head came out?
Yeah. Well, because I've been pushing for a while, and I don't think it had been progressing, so we changed, and we did the birth stool and blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, I ended up on the floor, and that's when Kelly was kind of like, it's probably time for Nick Roberts. And so we did that forever. I don't know how you guys, you guys held my legs back for so long.
I was pretty sore.
I felt literally between one of the contractions, I was laying there thinking, like, my legs are so heavy right now, and every time I push, I push against you guys, and this is like a CrossFit workout from hell, because it's never gonna end. But then she was born right there on the floor, which was not the plan. We were gonna have you in the water, and it was gonna be calm and peaceful, but instead it was a little bit chaotic, and there was a lot of me begging to go to the hospital, and
yeah, Laura had to get a little tough love, and I remember her saying, it's not safe for us to leave now, and we're not going to go get a cesarean right now, because if we left to go get one, you'd have a baby in the car, and it's
26 degrees out.
And it's just not safe to leave. And
I really distinctly remember her saying that.
Because we tried. We're like, no, you're so strong. You can do it. And finally she's like, no, we're just not going to go because it's not safe.
And I needed to hear that.
It worked. You completely changed after that. I was just like, okay, we're doing this. And
all right, fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she was born at home the wee hours of the morning after, it was 11 and a half hours from first contraction till holding my baby. After that nice birth pause where she was on the floor in front of me, and I was looking at her, and then somebody was you touch her, and I was like, I don't think I want to touch her. It was just this funny thing that was I knew that she was my baby, but at the same time, it's just really hard to believe that, it was in, now it's out, and I'm supposed to just pick it up, and she was just so calm. I don't even remember her crying very much the first couple hours.
I remember when she came out, and you were on your hands and knees, and you looked down at her, and I could tell that Laura and Kelly wanted to start rubbing,
right.
And I remember saying, and I might have even grabbed your hand and pushed your hand towards her.
Yeah, I think you did.
Because I was like, I want you to rub her
and
talk to her and not have it be somebody else's hands. So I'm like, doctor, rub her, tell her hi, glad you're here, kind of stuff.
And then I don't know, is that part's still fuzzy in my head, but I remember picking her up and sitting back on my heels and thinking holy cow, she's huge. Yeah. I remember that. But I will say, sort of the end part of the whole thing is that it was so healing in so many ways to have a VBAC, but it was so healing in so many ways just to have a pregnancy and a labor where somebody loved us and somebody really cared for us in all ways beyond beyond the physical.
Yeah.
Because I know in my heart that if I would have transferred and had a C-section, I still would have felt the same way about my actual experience. I still would have felt like it was very healing and it was very wonderful. And so in a lot of ways, I think that what was healing was the care and not so much the outcome, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people think, well, if I don't have a VBAC, you know, I'm not going to get that same redemptive birth experience, but I really think you can. I think if you feel loved and cared for your entire pregnancy and you feel respected and included in all of your decision making, like you will come out of it and either, you know, no matter what happens, holding an awesome slimy baby and feeling different about yourself as a birthing human. I mean, when you realize that you advocated for yourself and your family and that you were treated with nothing but love and respect and that you got to make decisions that were educated decisions, you know, whether you end up with a VBAC or a C-section, I know I would feel the same about that.
Oh, I agree. And if you would have transferred, you would have stayed in the hospital, gone home, and then gone right back into your midwife's care.
Right.
And so it would have been a complete
there's
circle,
continuity of
and
care
there would have
with
been
free.
Some closure at the end.
Yes.
And still that love and care afterwards. So, yeah, I like that part too.
And I loved not having to pack up both kids and go somewhere for checkups for that 2-day, 2-week, 6-week. I don't even remember what all they were. And it was just so nice to let them come here and have me in my pajamas and the one kid running around feral and the other one sound asleep and me just like taking 80 pictures of her, and I really loved that part too. And it was cold and flu season, so it was really nice to not have to try to take them to a doctor's office. But so that's our long-winded home birth after cesarean story.
What was your favorite part? Favorite part? Moment that kind of sticks out?
Even though I was super woozy, I felt so emotional after I had the placenta delivered and I just was holding her, and then they did her vitals and her weight and the measurements and things like that, and I was just on the couch and it was just all these people who I felt like had nothing but love and respect and care. And so it was, you know, my husband, you, and then the midwifery team and the birth photographer, and it just felt very it just felt the opposite of medicalized. I felt just very like safe, of course, but very, I don't know what the word is for it. It's like there has to be some German word for it, you know what I mean? Just that feeling. Like that emotional like umami where like it just is savory and warm and comfortable and fulfilled, and I loved that feeling after I had her. It was
awesome.
And maybe it was because my first was a C-section, so I wasn't the first to hold her. I wasn't the first to talk to her. I wasn't the first to see her. You know, they wiped her down so she smelled like a towel instead of my baby. I don't know if it, you know, all those sensory inputs have something to do with it, but that was by far my favorite part.
Awesome. Would you do anything different?
I would have tried to eat and drink more during labor and like leading up into it, but you know, my husband told me you didn't even know you were in like the real labor, and he's like, so what were you gonna do? Like pig out on all this food and water, and then like maybe you still had 20 hours of labor left. Did you just bite your lip? And so that I wish I had, you know, tempered myself better in terms of eating and drinking. I wish that I would have had that giant birth pool. And I really wish that I had changed out of those wool pants.
When you're walking?
When I thought that I was in labor, because I wore those until I got in the pool. And then now every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, you're dead to me.
The dreaded wool pants. You have so many teeth. So many teeth. Yes, I see them. Well, thank you for telling your story.
Yes, thank you for being my doula.
It was amazing. You need to have more babies. Because it's amazing. Yeah, your mom was a tough lady. Well, thank you for watching. We'll have more birth stories, and there'll be links in the description below to more. And ask questions, leave comments, all that good stuff. Bye. Thank you.